folks. Welcome to another episode of Tim Scott Uncancelled with me, Tim Scott. We've got a great show for you today. Some really interesting topical stories, and you're going to like our guest, Dr. Phil Kiszely from the New Culture Forum. Yeah, hi folks, welcome back, and it's Tim Scott again with Tim Scott Uncancelled, and our thanks to Lembit Opik in the studio, and we have a guest who I'll be introducing in a minute, Dr. Phil Kiszely from the New Culture Forum. But a big welcome to you. Thank you for watching, whoever you are, wherever you are, or however you are watching. And talking of how you can watch, you can go to YouTube. This is one of the best ways to stay in touch with us. Go to YouTube, in the search box, type in Unprecedented TV and scroll down. And if you can give us a cheeky follow or a subscribe, that would be much appreciated. So as ever on the show, we've got 5 or 6 really cracking topical stories for you. We always like to end on a slightly light-hearted one. So we go out and buy the newspapers so you don't have to. And unlike the evening newspaper shows, we go behind the front page and we try and find some of the juicier, more slightly nuanced stories and certain angles on them that you might not find elsewhere. So the format, as ever, a few comments from me, and then we'll bring in our guest. Okay, so my comments for the times that we live in. It would be tempting to be in a state of near despair or even total despair about the times that we live in. I mean, where are we? We now, following votes in Parliament, we now have abortion decriminalized up to birth. We've had attempts to introduce assisted suicide if you're a bit older and not feeling too well. We've got Brexit attempting to be unwound and reversed. We've got a story on that on the show in a minute. Our defences, particularly our Navy, are really not looking good at all. I mean, embarrassingly bad. We've got a story on that in the show as well. And we've got a flatlining economy even before the troubles in Iran. We have a flatlining economy with Labour still spending, borrowing, taxing far too much money. Productivity is poor. We've got a flatlining economy, and I think it's going to get worse. And we've got per person, if you have a flatlining economy with so many more people coming into the country, per person, we are actually going backwards. In fact, we could already be in recession. But don't worry, folks, these are all negative diagnoses. I think we are looking for some of the solutions on this show. And we do thank you again for being with us here on Tim Scott Uncancelled. So with that in mind, let's bring in our guest for this episode, Dr. Phil Kiszely of the New Culture Forum. Phil, good to see you again.
Oh, Tim, it's great to see you again. And you're just listing all that catastrophe, and you want something from me. I'm worried. I know. But yeah, it's great to be here.
Yes, we hope people haven't turned off by now. But we're gonna find some of the solutions on this show, Phil. Phil, what have you been up to? And tell us a little bit about where people can find you, because I know you're on X, and quickly about the New Culture Forum.
Yeah, well, I am Kiszely Philip at Kiszely Philip on X, and I'm very, very active on there. Yeah. It's all fun and games. So you can find me on Talk TV most days, actually. So I'm a regular on Kevin O'Sullivan's show. I'm also on Peter Cardwell's show. I'm on Mike Graham's
show,
which is fantastic. I was just on there earlier on today. I'm on there every other Friday, so you can get me there. And of course,
you do it early Friday morning, don't you, Phil?
I'm up at the crack of dawn on Friday, talking gibberish.
You're looking good, though.
Well, I'm 25, so there you go. That's how bad it is. No, I'm not really. I'm 54. But of course, you can find me at New Culture Forum as well, where I'm a senior fellow, along with, there he is, Rafe Edelman-Koo and Emma Webb, and there's Harrison, and there's the late great Peter Whittle, who was our founded New Culture Forum in 2006. And he was one of the first people that put culture front and center. Everybody was talking about economics, and economics, is obviously massively important, as we're going to talk about today. But he put culture front and center in 2006. And I think he was right. He was one of the first people to do that. So I think that's why New Culture Forum has survived and thrived so much. We are a think tank. We're a media channel, but we're also, Tim, as you know, a grassroots movement. So I run the grassroots movement. I'm the national organizer for New Culture Forum Locals. Go onto the website. You can click on New Culture Forum Locals tab and join up. Please do join up. We've got branches up and down the country. We're doing lots of stuff. And finally, I know this is a big plug. This is the biggest plug in the world, isn't it?
That's right.
And finally, I'm the director of the New Culture Forum Literary Festival. So that's happening. We've not actually announced the dates yet, but I'm going to say it here. It's the 5th and 6th of June, and we've got some great speakers, including Alison Pearson. So lots and lots of good stuff. Keep an eye on all of that kind of thing. Do join New Culture Forum Locals. Do sign up to the YouTube channel. Lots of good stuff happening there.
No, some of the local groups are very good. And you're a think tank that's allowed to think. Imagine that.
We're a think tank that's allowed to think, which is a bit of a novelty these days. We're based in Westminster, and we not only do we publish documentaries, we publish books, reports, and all the rest of it. Our new book, Immigration: The Betrayal of Britain, is an edited collection, and that's just out. So you can get that on Amazon and all good bookshops. Like, I'm going to give another plug here, Tim. Old Books, which is a fantastic bookshop. Old Speak Books, check them out. They are just wonderful. They're our bookshop for
good stuff
for the literature festival. So that's our new book, Immigration: The Betrayal of Britain. I think your viewers will find it really, really interesting. I've written a chapter in there. Rafe's written one. Harrison's written one. Connor Tomlinson's written one. Lots, and all the commentators are in there.
Okay, good.
I think it's a good book.
Thanks, Phil. Good. Okay. Well, look, let's try and find some solutions. And as promised, we go out and buy the newspaper, so you don't have to. And we buy everything from The Guardian to The Telegraph. So with that in mind, let's start with a very topical first story. And this is from The Guardian. And Pete Hegseth, the American, well, I was going to call him the defense minister or the defense secretary, but I think it's now called the Department of War. Isn't it? And I suppose the Guardian might say, well, having renamed it the Department of War, Trump is now looking for one. Pete Hegseth, ungrateful European allies should be thanking Trump. The US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said yesterday that America's ungrateful allies in Europe should be saying thank you to Donald Trump. Speaking to reporters, Hegseth also said there is no time frame for ending the war with Iran, and did not deny reports the Pentagon will be looking to spend a lot of extra money. He said at the start that his address was aimed more at the American public. The world, the Middle East are ungrateful allies in Europe. Even segments of our own press should be saying one thing to President Trump. Thank you. Phil, this is very topical. I mean, have you got any sort of just general comments about to begin with about Israel's participation and America's participation in this, and should we be doing something? If so, what?
Well, I mean, it's so complex. I'll actually, if I can, Tim, I'll come to America and Israel in a minute. I'll just address these comments, which are remarkable. We should be grateful. We should be grateful for being saddled with a war with no end, by the looks of it. It's almost like saying, I've given you herpes. You should be grateful for herpes. You're not going to get rid of it, but you should be grateful. It's that kind of thing, really. It feels as though, my God, this is a bit silly. I think we've got to look at where the war's going, why it was started, and I think it started really well. They took out the Ayatollah in the first day, I think, didn't they? And it feels as though a hideous regime, an absolutely appalling regime like the Iranian regime, if they are anywhere near nuclear weapons, then we need to do something about it. That's not for Israel. That's not for the Middle East. That's for us. We're talking about nuclear weapons here. And these people are psychopaths. They killed, 40,000 of their own people in January. They blind women in one eye for showing a bit of hair. They stone women to death. They hang gays from cranes. All the stuff that we know about. This is an appalling regime. But you just think that Trump hasn't thought this through. This is the hub of oil production. All of the other countries, this is, the West relies on oil production. He probably hasn't thought about the ramifications. Now, the idea that Israel and the US are involved in this together, yes, I can completely understand that. Israel have had 30-odd thousand rockets and missiles launched against them, launched against civilians over the last decade or so. And Iran have pretty much bankrolled that because they bankroll Hamas and Hezbollah, two appalling terror groups. So I can understand why Israel are in this. They need to dismantle. They need to take the head off the serpent. That's fair enough.
They quite rightly cannot tolerate, Phil, a nuclear-armed Iran.
They can't. It would be stupid, and they shouldn't have to tolerate rockets being flown into the country aimed at civilians, aimed at children, day after day after day. Okay, they've got the Iron Dome, but you can understand why they want to get rid of this. They're called colonialist settlers, aren't they? The place is about as big as Wales, and it's surrounded by Islamist lunatics or Islamic countries. Saudi Arabia, or they're okay, but it's surrounded by lots of people who want to kill them. It just feels as though Trump has made a mistake here. It's a tactical mistake because he hasn't planned forward, and that's the thing that I'm really concerned about. We will feel it in several ways, Tim. First of all, we're going to feel it economically, of course. Bills are going to go up, and that's going to be obviously okay. But also, I think this war is going to be played out on our streets because this is the 21st century and it's going to turn into a dirty urban guerrilla war on our streets. Our country is full of Islamists who hate Britain, hate the West, and will do anything to attack it from within. And I think we've already seen a great kind of veneration, a worshipping of the Ayatollah, the dead Ayatollah. It's like tears for Hitler, and that's happening in this country. We've had marches. We've had student groups talking about following the Ayatollah, all of that kind of stuff. That's happening in this country. Okay, so I think that's going to translate into civil unrest, guerrilla warfare, and terrorism. Okay, for me, that's the big problem with all of this.
Phil, this wouldn't be the first time we've seen overseas conflicts playing out on Britain's streets. Eritrea even, and other such conflicts, Sri Lanka back in the day, and I think I largely agree with what you say, Phil. I think there is a many Muslims in Britain are well integrated and
of course
contributing to our national life, and we certainly shouldn't be taking against these people are our neighbors and our friends and our work colleagues. But you are right to point out that there is a hardcore Islamist minority among them, some of whom are quite alarming and almost seem to venerate this regime.
Yeah, I think I just echo what you've said there. Lots of law-abiding Muslims who love this country and just want to get on with it and work and run businesses and all the rest of it. I'm not talking about them. And in a way,
I agree.
It's awful to say, but in this situation, they don't really matter. The only people that matter are the people who want to do us harm, and unfortunately, there is quite a large number of them.
There's enough of them.
Well, if you look at the research from Policy Exchange, for example, another think tank, we see that the demographic, which is young men under 35, most of them think homosexuality should be made illegal, that
Yes.
some of them think homosexuals should be killed. They hate infidels, they hate Britain, they hate the West, all of that stuff. All of this stuff is documented in research.
Yeah,
But
a husband should be allowed to beat his wife, all this sort of
all of this kind of stuff. So the problem is, we are now, and this probably will be one of the last times we can really talk about this with approaching any kind of openness, because we are being shut down, aren't we? We cannot talk about Islamism, and we cannot talk about the threat that it represents, because the new definition of Islamophobia will be framed around individuals. This is anti-Muslim sentiment. So if you are talking about Islamophobia, they will frame it as though you are talking about particular people, and then they can say that is hate. So that's very, very frightening, because this is
it is worrying.
Sorry, if I can just come back to your key point, which is these things are being played out in this country, and there's one obvious reason for that. It's because we've had mass immigration for 30 years, and we have the rest of the world now living in this country. And as we've seen from the boats and the small boats and the illegal immigrants, many people are from places like Eritrea, you've just mentioned, Somalia. Afghanistan, and they are causing us trouble in different kinds of ways, because they're from essentially village mountain cultures, which are not really compatible with the most sophisticated Western fragmented cultures, which are the most sophisticated in the world. So we have real problems.
Yes, certainly some issues and some challenges there, Phil. And I would agree with you. This new definition of anti-Muslim hostility, I think, is going to squeeze free speech even further. But let's move on and to our next story, which is kind of linked, because it's to do with the Royal Navy, the British Navy. And this is from the Times. Ministry of Defence may delay new warships to save billions. Ministers are planning to push back shipbuilding programs and other projects to make 10 billion worth of savings in the MOD, the Times has been told. A replacement program for the 6 Type 45 destroyers, HMS Dragon, the one that we finally managed to get to see, is one of them, expected to be retired in the 2030s, will be deferred by years. The warships, Britain's only defence against missiles, have suffered years of repeated breakdowns, etc. Other big programs are expected to be delayed, meaning fewer items will be ordered or equipment plans will go ahead, but the weapons may have to be slightly downgraded. Delaying programs will ultimately mean it will cost the taxpayer more money over time. Just before I bring Phil in, let me just quickly explain that. I mean, Phil probably knows about this thing about in-year savings. You get a lot of it is not just defense, it's these infrastructure and public sector projects. They are cut to save money in year, this year or next year, but then in the end it takes longer, and because it takes longer, in the end it costs more money, which is why so many projects in this country, including MOD, Ministry of Defence procurement contracts, often come in over budget and over time. But Phil, I mean, I don't know how closely you follow defence. I mean, but certainly the Navy, I mean, despite the professionalism of those working in it, I mean, our Navy's hasn't had the best press lately, has it?
No, and you don't need to follow defence closely to know and to realise that we desperately need a robust defence in this country, because things are changing, aren't they? We don't have this post-war settlement anymore. We are in the 21st century now. We are talking big rogue beasts. We're talking Russia. We're talking Iran. We're talking North Korea. I was talking before about Iran not having a nuclear weapon. I suppose all they really need to do is phone up North Korea, get the nuclear weapon from them, phone up Russia, get them to be able to transport it, and we're back to position A again. So these things are not as simple as they look. As far as we're concerned, we desperately need a robust defense. And I've been talking about this for the last couple of weeks now. Yeah. And I think HMS Dragon has arrived yet. I don't think it's arrived in the
No, it's still on its way. on its way. Yes.
Yeah, I was talking. When was it? Last week before it set off, it was still being welded, and the funnel had scaffolding around it. It's crazy. It's ludicrous. It's carry on stuff. This is Britain. This is the great British Navy, Royal Navy, and this is where we are. It feels almost like we are a bit of a joke, and this is decades and decades of running down our armed forces, and it isn't just about economics, it's also culturally as well. There's something. Yes. Our country looks down on, well, it looks down on patriotism, doesn't it? But it also looks down on the military. And it has done. I worked in universities for 25 years. I can really tell you that the cultural elites look down on the military, find it very distasteful. These people are pacifists and unilateralists. And those positions are extremely dangerous. But that is essentially the position of the institutions and the civil service. But there's something else as well when it comes to spending. I was just thinking, well, while you were talking about that there, they'll spend on what they want. Okay, so they've spent a fortune on Ofcom lately. They've spent a fortune on the Forestry Commission lately. These Ofcom is there to control us, isn't it? You know, to control the national media, to shut down debate and a mechanism for people to complain about channels like Talk TV and GB News. And of course, the Forestry Commission feeds into the environmentalist narrative. Now, I'm all for forests and a healthy environment, but I think this isn't about that. This is ideological and this is political. What we really need to do is tear all of that stuff apart. This is about the blob, isn't it? This is about the mechanisms that frustrate the best interests of this country. Get rid of all of that kind of stuff. This is what we should be looking to in 2028, 2020.
Thanks, Phil. I mean, I think you made a good point about Israel. I mean, somebody put it to me the other day. They said, well, imagine you're living here in England and we had Hezbollah in Scotland and Hamas in Wales and the Houthis controlled the Channel Islands. And France was trying to build a nuclear bomb and talking about wiping us off the map. I mean, how would we, I mean, Israel, it is, just about, I think, the Middle East's only prosperous democracy, isn't it? I think I'm right in saying that.
Oh, yes. It is the Middle East's only democracy. This is the only place where Arabs and Jews have equal rights. This is the only place where women have equal rights. This is the only place, as you say, that is completely free. It is a democracy, and it's under constant attack. There is an existential threat every second of the day. I don't know if you've spent any time in the Middle East. In some of those countries, the attitudes there would shame the Third Reich. So that's the kind of problem that Israel is facing at the moment. It is an existential threat, but we are beginning to see our own problems mount and mount and mount. There was a story today, I don't know whether viewers have seen it, but the Green Party want to go soft on and de-escalate terror laws and just make them like any other kind of criminal law. Now, that is potentially catastrophic. That puts everybody in danger. Now, there's a reason they're doing that, of course, because they are essentially now the Islamist party. They never talk about the environment anymore. So there is something going on there. We do, Tim, now we do have to take the Green Party seriously. We do have to begin to take them seriously, because if Gorton and Denton is anything to go by, we could be looking at circa 80 to 100 Green MPs in the next general election. So yes, you can fully understand why Israel is constantly aware and constantly battling, but we have to do the same ourselves, I think, and we have to at least take the threat very seriously, and I don't think we're doing that.
Yeah, I think, Phil, I think the Greens, you're right, the Greens have come a long way, haven't they, since, being tree huggers and, talking about composting and recycling. I mean, they're now a hard left party. But final comment on this whole story. I mean, what do you think Trump wants to get out of his war against Iran, Phil?
God, what a question. I'm not sure he knows, actually.
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
sure he knows. I think there's probably got to be some economic imperative there, because he doesn't do these things without some kind of reward in that way. But I think, you know, as he wants to get rid of the regime. I think that's a noble goal, and I think he genuinely does want to do that. So I'm perfectly happy with his motivation. That
yeah.
would be my motivation, and that's the motivation of any decent, sensible person. I'm very concerned, as I've said before, that it's turning chaotic, it's turning expensive, it's turning dangerous, I think, now for us, and I'm just thinking about us, and I don't think he knows where it's going. That's my problem.
Okay, Phil, thank you. All right, let's move on to our next story. And unusually, this is from one of the local papers. I live in Buckinghamshire. And when I went out to buy the papers this morning, I noticed this story from the Bucks Free Press, but it gives us a chance to talk about reform a bit and the state of our party politics. We've already talked about the Greens. Reform predicted to win in Wickham. This is the town of High Wycombe in Buckinghamshire, and the seat of Wickham, which includes some of the surrounding villages as well. That's only been Labour once since the war under Clement Attlee, 1945. Then Steve Baker, Paul Goodman, then Steve Baker more recently was the MP. But it's gone back to Labour. Emma Reynolds. Farage serves up a warning to rivals in campaign visit. Nigel Farage's political party would win in Wickham if a general election was held tomorrow. That is the conclusion from the latest polling data compiled by Electoral Calculus, revealed as the leader of Reform UK visited Buckinghamshire this week. In an interview with this newspaper, Nigel Farage said he was in it to win it, claiming Britain was broken and desperately needed a new direction. Now, I have to say, I think Reform would be doing very well to win High Wycombe. It's certainly not one of the top seats on their target list. But Phil, I mean, where do you think Reform are going?
It's early days,
Relatively still. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think if we're thinking about the next general election, I think it is early days, and I'm not quite sure how their policy will unwind. I mean, I've got a fair idea because I'm familiar with their think tank. I work for a think tank, and I know what's going on in Westminster. But I think as far as the British public is concerned, I think the British public have moved as far to the right as they're going to go at the moment. Okay. I think circumstances and events over the next year or so will take them further right. Okay. And I think Reform will respond to the British public, okay, because they are looking to form a government in 2028, 29, okay, and they need the biggest voter base possible. So they are not going to outflank the British public on the right, but they are going to go as far right as they possibly can go. Right, now that's one thing, okay. The other thing is, of course, there are other right-wing parties now. So there's Rupert Lowe's Restore, there's Ben Habib's Advance, and there's the SDP as well, which is actually a left-wing party, but it's in terms of culture, it's fairly traditionalist and leans to the right. So there's quite a lot going on there. I think Reform do need to keep their eye on that configuration, but I would say that there was a poll out lately, not long ago, wasn't there? And it was a really interesting one, because I don't know whether you know about it, Tim, but it showed a picture of Rupert Lowe without his name, and it showed a picture of Ben Habib. 92% of, because I'm coming to the idea of a split vote here, 90% of people didn't know who Rupert Lowe was.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
I think 96% of people didn't know who Ben Habib was. Okay, so that the idea of a split vote, at least at the moment, I think is overhyped. I don't think it is going to be that much of a split vote, because everybody in the country knows who Nigel is. Now, I think what Gorton and Denton told us is that they did really, really well, and Matt produced a heroic campaign. But the really important thing, the really frightening thing, this is the key issue for me, actually, Tim, right? This is whether they will win or lose, or whether they'll get a big enough majority. 53% of people in Gorton and Denton did not vote. right? 53% of people did not bother to get up off their back.
Philip, a huge by-election, massive publicity. The constituency door-knocked and leafleted to death, and half still didn't vote.
More than half still didn't vote. So if that happens across the board, then that is going to be catastrophic for reform. It's not going to be catastrophic for the Green Party. It's not going to be catastrophic for the other leftist parties because they will vote. Okay, those demographics, whatever they are, they will definitely vote. So what reform needs to do is think about motivating people and giving them that reason to get up off their backsides and go and vote. And if they can do that, then I think we'll be in a good situation.
Okay, Phil, thanks for your comments and expertise there. And we'll move on to our next story in a second. But first, let's find out about some of the other shows that are available for you here on Unprecedented TV. Okay, thank you, studio. Yeah, that's Dire Consequences with Claire Dyer. All right, so let's move on to our next story. Now, this one, you could hardly make this up. Yeah. This is from the Mirror. Rwanda row. UK denies debt on migrant plan. Lawyers have denied the UK owes Rwanda millions over the failed migrant deportation deal agreed by the Tories. The East African nation claims Britain breached the agreement, and it is suing for more than 100 million.
Of course it is.
Yes. I mean, I always thought this deal was a bit flaky. And we sent more foreign secretaries to Rwanda than migrants, didn't we?
Yeah, it didn't work, did it? And there's a reason why it didn't work. And this is because we have a chattering class civil service. We have officials, we have mandarins who spend their time, dedicate their whole lives to frustrating the democratic process. Okay, we know that. Who are absolutely married to this idea, philosophy of mass immigration, who hate Britain as a country. And it's very difficult. As we've seen over the last 12 months, 18 months, the Labour Party keep coming up with these different strategies to deal with. We're just seeing there the stop the boats. Keir Starmer, stop the boats. Thinking about trying to bring down immigration. None of it works. None of it works because the system itself is broken. It needs ripping up and starting again. We need to leave the ECHR. We need to push back on international law. We need to do all of these things. This was just one manifestation of one of these things that didn't work. Okay, it's probably better than most of the stuff that Starmer's come up with since, actually. But of course, it wasn't going to work, and they weren't going to carry on with it when the new government came in. And so I was just talking about a story the other day, which was the African Union, I think, wants reparation for slavery. And this is on the back of Richard Hermer's work. So this is actually really quite important. This is different to Lenny Henry saying, "Oh, I've done the maths, and I've counted on my fingers and toes, and we owe them 11. You owe us 11 gazillion pounds." This is a bit different. This is a bit more serious, and we have to take it more seriously. Again, this is handout stuff. They want money from us. I think we can push this back quite easily. But I think these constant demands, this isn't about colonialism and reparations and slavery, but it's not a million miles away from that. It's, it's you owe us. We want something from you. It's this constant dripping. Like I say, I think we'll be able to push back on this stuff, but I think we've got to take the African Union stuff very, very seriously.
I mean, let's hope it doesn't go the same way as the Chagos Islands. It's come up at the Permanent Court of Arbitration in Holland, one of the other things that worries me is some of these international verdicts that we're getting against Britain. We had the Chagos Islands, and with a panel of 15 judges, one of whom was from communist China, one of whom was from Russia and had previously ruled that Putin's invasion of Ukraine was perfectly justified. And one of the other judges was from Somalia. I mean, are these the kind of people we want to be taking orders from?
I know it's bizarre, isn't it? And everybody, again, just going back to the war in Iran, you know, everyone who's supporting it say, well, oh, it's international law, this is illegal. You know, what about Iran? They're pretty, you know, they break international law. They've broken international law once or twice. You never say anything about that. You know, the problem with international law is that we adhere to it strictly and nobody else does. You know, we in the West, I should say, and the Anglosphere, nobody else does. I think the problem we've got, you just mentioned the Chagos Islands there, and I think it's a really good example. We have this inbuilt, deep-seated culture of repudiation, of self-flagellation, and the Labour Party in particular are riddled with it. They hate Britain, they hate us, they hate the West. They you know, they will put anything on a pedestal that is global South or Middle Eastern. So we have precisely the wrong people in there fighting for us. It couldn't be worse. And this again, I mentioned colonialism and the British Empire and all of that kind of thing. There's this constant guilt that revolves around that stuff, and that in a way is kind of what we're fighting. So we have to think about what happened in the 19th century. I know this isn't strictly about that kind of stuff, but everything else revolves around it, and we have to know. So, you know, the Africans participated in slavery. You know, it wasn't just Europeans coming in.
Where did we get the slaves from? They didn't fall out of the sky.
Exactly. The Africans participated in slavery. Yeah. That's one thing. And if you think about, and I'm not condoning slavery. It's an abomination. But in the ancient world, Africa was built on slavery. You know, so that's one thing. But if you think about the British Empire in Africa, I suppose the legacy has been, a fall in infant mortality, greater life expectancy, education, cleanliness, an increase in medical efficiency, all of those things. You can greater wealth. You can talk about all of those things as outcomes. I'm not defending straightforwardly defending colonialism there, but I'm saying it's a nuanced conversation, and we were the people who outlawed slavery because we were the only ones to morally object to it. The West were the only people to morally object. All of this stuff comes from that stuff. So the Rwanda feel as though they can ask for money back because it's on the back of all of that stuff.
Yeah, quite right, Phil. Thank you. Yes, I mean, I think we played a leading role in getting slavery abolished worldwide.
We abolished it.
Yeah, and the Navy was used, and places were. I read somewhere that I think in about 1850, for example, we threatened Brazil with war if they wouldn't abolish slavery. We were prepared to put British lives on the line, not least with the Navy. And we invaded Benin, the West African country of Benin. We invaded Benin to get them to stop this dreadful system of slavery and human sacrifice that they had. I mean, British lives were put on the line to wrap up slavery, but we also benefited from it. So we have to be honest. All right, let's move on. Thanks, Phil. Okay, second to last story. This is from the Daily Mail. Again, a topical story. Starmer's Brexit reset will mean paying billions to EU aid fund, pouring billions of pounds into Brussels' aid budget, and no doubt every other budget as well, will be the price for closer ties with the European Union. Rachel Reeves was warned yesterday. Senior EU diplomats told the Daily Mail Britain should be prepared to be big payers if it wants to realign with Brussels regulations in more areas, let alone rejoin, although there is no rejoin. You either join or you don't. And the UK would have to accept the jurisdiction of EU rules over much more of the British economy. Well, yeah, Phil, I mean, it's a fascinating one. I think if we were to go having a record vote, 17.5 million people voted to leave, not even 10 million voted for this EU, for this Labour government. I mean, if we were to go cap in hand back to Brussels, please, sir, may I have some more? I mean, not only would we be an absolute laughing stock, I mean, the EU would absolutely rinse us and stitch us up in one go, wouldn't they?
The EU hates us, the EU hates us for leaving, and that nothing is going to change that. I mean, I just think back to 2016. I voted to leave for one very, very simple reason, and that was to get the keys back to my own front door, right? I just wanted out. I wanted sovereignty. Sovereignty is, if you want a healthy society, which is a safe society, you need sovereignty, you need borders. Now, obviously, the terrible thing is that we didn't get anything that we wanted, because, as I said before, the bureaucratic class stopped us at every turn, frustrated the process at every turn. So this has just been an absolute disaster. The fact that it's back on the table so many years later, a decade later, are we going to be talking about this in 2036, if I'm still here, which I probably won't be.
Come on, Phil. You're looking good.
I'm looking all right.
You're looking good for it.
I'm looking good for 90. But it just feels as though this is never going to go away. And I don't want to give them a penny. I don't want to have anything to do with the EU. And this is one of the reasons why we desperately need to get rid of this Labour Party. We desperately need a strong reform party that will not only deal with the politics above the line, but they will deal with the civil service and the blob below the line as well, and take all of that stuff apart. That's what this is about. We need to get rid of all of that stuff. We need to change the culture in Whitehall. We need to think about how we can do that. That's probably the most difficult thing we faced since the end of the war, actually. That is, it's not only just changing a culture, it's changing a whole philosophy. I think we've come to the end of what you might describe as the liberal era, okay? And it has been catastrophic for us. All you have to do is look at mass immigration. We've got three problems: mass immigration, Islamism, and identity politics. That is what the liberal era has given us. What we need to do now is think about the next era, think about the 21st century, and think about how we can survive that and how we can prosper. That means a completely different philosophy. It needs a kind of radical conservatism, I think.
Yeah, the politics of national preference.
Yeah, I think
somebody has, the job of the government of the nation is to govern the nation and do what's in the nation's interests. Now, of course, we still have we still have allies, we still have trading partners, we can still cooperate and work with other countries, and we still have international commitments. But the politics of national preference, not the politics of unaccountable judges and courts and organizations that most people have barely even heard of, and we don't know who they are.
Yeah, and that, that working in concert with other nations, being
very happy to do that,
caring about the globe, caring about, that's all part of national self-interest, actually, But much of this stuff, much of this position, this philosophy actually comes from Blair, doesn't it? It comes from the Blair years, and that's what we're suffering from. We're suffering from this the Blairite managerial classes.
Sort of technocratic,
the rule, all of those things,
the rule of so-called experts, nobody, but unelected, unaccountable, nobody knows who they are. They're just sort of, they're there somewhere. All right, Phil, thank you. We'll come to our final story then. And we always like to end on a slightly light-hearted one. This is from the Express. Everest tin from 1953, not in peak condition.
I know how it feels.
I know. I'm here all week, Phil. This tin of beef dripping from the first ascent of Everest has been bought for £500 by the oldest Brit to climb it. This is quite a sweet story, actually.
Yeah.
Sir Edmund Hillary in Tenzing, Norgay, scaled the world's highest peak in 1953. The can belonged to Torquay-born Trek member Mike Westmacott. It was sold at an Exeter auction to Graham Keane, left. He scaled the 29,000-foot high peak in 2020 at age 68. There's hope for us yet, Phil.
Oh, fantastic.
And now gives talks on the Himalayas. He said it will be a fine historic prop. The tin is a bit rusty, so I don't think there's any danger the contents will be eaten. It's a lovely story, isn't it?
It's a lovely story. I'm looking at this fella here. He's 68. He's scaled Everest. Fantastic, and you compare him to the 9 million people on benefits at the moment.
Yes, at 68.
And he's doing this at
Everest.
Look at him, and he's probably, he's doing it in an old school way. He's got his anorak on there, and he's. I also remember that footage of. Do you remember Blue Peter and John Noakes climbing Trafalgar Square?
Nelson's Column.
Column in a pair of suede slip-on shoes. I see this guy doing a similar kind of thing, and it just reminds me, actually, talking about the green. Bringing it back to the Green Party. I'm obsessed with them, aren't I? But they're much in my mind at the moment. I'm comparing this fella here, 68, climbing Everest, to a Green councillor who's standing for to be elected in my hometown of Bury in Greater Manchester. She's standing to be elected, but she is unemployed. She's on the dole. She can't get up and go to work on a Monday morning, yet she wants to be elected so she can preach to us about the economy, about culture, about society and politics. This is society now, which is completely different, obviously, to when this fellow was young and what this fellow was doing. So good on him. And beef dripping, I've never had it.
Yes, that's what it says on the tin. Colonial.
It sounds delectable. It sounds
from where's it from? Does it say? Is it New Zealand on it? Or no, Australia, I think. Sounds lovely.
Hillary
this is just what you need as you're climbing Everest, isn't it? Some beef dripping.
Well, I don't know whether you eat it or you rub it on, but it would certainly keep you warm, wouldn't it?
Keeps the flies away or something. Yeah. Well, Phil, look, Dr. Philip Kiszely from New Culture Forum. Thank you so much. Just tell us a little bit again about the book that you mentioned earlier, where people can find it.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, brilliant! Thank you. It's one of we published a trilogy, actually. This is the fourth book in the trilogy. Which it started with the Long March Through the Institutions. Then we published a book which was a monograph.
Mark Sidwell, wasn't it?
By Mark Sidwell. I was just trying to remember his name. Then we published a book called Fighting Back, which was an edited collection. I think that had people like Konstantin Kisin. I think David Starkey produced a chapter there. Then we wrote a book called State of Emergency. And now this new one, Immigration, Betrayal of Britain. And I'm just thinking about the trajectory that the books have taken. So we started with Long March Through the Institution, but then Fighting Back, State of Emergency, and now the Betrayal of Britain. So I think things are getting worse, and that is reflected in the tone of this book. I wrote a chapter about Manchester. Because just not that long ago, I'd visited my mother who lives in Manchester. I was walking through the city centre, and it just felt as though it was the end of the world. There was a woman defecating in a a doorway, a shop doorway. There were marauding gangs of what looked like Asian lads in black tracksuits. There were people fighting. There was lots of homelessness and drunkenness and drugs and all of that kind of thing. And I thought, it was always a tough town, Manchester. I'm not saying it wasn't, but this wasn't the great place, the place of the Smiths, Oasis, Stone Roses, that hedonism, that wonderful nightlife, the hacienda that I grew up in. And so I thought I'd document it. And it's just a very sad, it feels lost at the moment, Manchester. It might not always be lost, but it does feel lost. And part of it is the satellite towns, places like Oldham, Rochdale, Bolton. Those places now are just poverty stricken, and they don't feel like Britain. So I think there's something very sad going on there, and we try to document it in this book, but we also try and offer solutions as well. I don't think there's any
solutions. Yeah,
about things. We try to offer solutions. So please do buy it if you.
And on X, Philip, again, you are.
I am Kiszely Philip on X, so you can follow me on X, and I'm very active on there, and I've got quite a big following, and it's all fun and games, let's say. So yeah, I think you might well enjoy my account at Kiszely Philip.
Okay, good stuff. And I'm at Tim Scott UK. All right, our thanks again to Dr. Philip Kiszely from the New Culture Forum, folks. Thanks for bearing with. It's been great to have you with us. And until next time, thanks for watching the latest episode of Tim Scott Uncancelled with me, Tim Scott.